Hi, it's Rachel with Stirring the Deep. Today I want to dive into a little bit more about the wisdom of God and how that differs from the wisdom of this world. And a lot of people assume they understand what that means, but I'll tell you is I am learning, I am finding out how different it really is. And there's a fundamental way that you approach life, and that's what I want to talk about in this video that makes the difference about what wisdom you're cultivating. So in James 3, starting in verse 14, it says, "But if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast and lie against the truth. This wisdom does not descend from above, but is earthly, sensual, demonic. For where envy and self-seeking exists, confusion and every evil thing are there. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness," those things I just listed, "is sown in peace by those who make peace." Remember, I've been talking about the sons of God are the peacemakers. Now there's a lot in here, okay? And so I'm going to just see where this goes today. First of all, there is a fundamental way in which you live your life, okay? And if you are in your mind operating by the wisdom of the world, you are creating suffering and pain and turmoil and harm and destruction in your life. If you are operating by the wisdom of God, then you are creating peace and joy and love. And what is very important to understand is that this wisdom from above, the wisdom of the Creator, our Heavenly Father, right, is of the Spirit. So what happens when you're seeking that wisdom, right, and that's that spending that time in reflection, seeking that inner counsel and the things in your life, what you're seeking is what creates paths of peace, what is truly loving in truth, in purity, in honor in the situation, what is merciful, what is creating rest. And there's all these different aspects of God, right? And it's like, how do I walk in that? How do I create those things? How do I create purity, holiness? Because where your mind is, the thoughts of your mind is what creates this world around you. And that's why it's so important to have the mind of Christ, the mind of God, have God establish your thoughts, okay? And so when you are seeking that wisdom of God, that's what you're doing in every situation, in your circumstances, your purpose in life, everything that you do, that's what you're seeking. What is the wisdom that creates those elements, those fruits in my life? Because when you walk in that, you abide in those fruits. And versus if you're following the wisdom of the world, which is it says in here, is earthly. So it's focused on the flesh. It's focused on the physical stuff. It's focused on what you sense, the sensual, what you get from your senses. So what your eyes see, what you experience, right? And what comes at you in this world. You're just looking at a very physical experience and what you're hearing. And that's what you're responding to. And that's what you're trying to gain wisdom in. So for example, it's, how do you gain more money? How do you get a certain job? How do you be the image of this certain parent? How do you look and have this certain of appearance that you think people will honor and value and give you attention for? That's a lot of stuff that women fall into and young girls. How do you get fame and recognition? So if you're striving for those things, how do you get power so that you can control things and have things the way that you want? How do you get this car? I mean, it's like this, and that's a lot of the wisdom of the world. How do you tame these certain things? And and you can think of those as finite resources. Like there's only, there's only so much money to have this certain car, to have this certain thing, to have this certain appearance, to have this certain job, right? And those are finite resources. They're earthly, they're physical, okay? Versus, and people seek wisdom for that all day long. Versus, how do you gain pure love and peace in your life, and that a life without hypocrisy, so you're really loving in sincerity? How do you be trustworthy? Because it's so important to be that trustworthy, and especially because you have to have that with God. So you just have these two different approaches. So one is so much of this earth, and it's of the sensual and senses, and the other one is so much of the spirit. You're cultivating the things of the spirit. So if you go after those things of the spirit, if that's what you seek, that is the wisdom that the Proverbs are speaking about, the Bible speaks about. Pursue those things. And when you do, it makes your environment, your world is full of those things. So your job is full of that peace and that joy and that enjoyment and that honor. Your marriage is, your family relations. It's like, if that's what you're pursuing, then that is what's created. So a lot of people, it's foolishness to pursue money. It's foolishness to pursue these things, because that will never get what people truly desire, because everybody's actually wanting the fulfillment of those deepest desires of the spirit, of the love, the peace, the joy, the acceptance, the value, all those things, the honor. But they're going by it in this fleshy way, by these physical means, and that's foolishness to God, as it says in 1 Corinthians 3:19, because it will never get you there. It will never satisfy. It will never fulfill. And you've seen plenty of examples in our world to show that that's true. So instead, you work from those things in that seeking that counsel of God. Well, what does really create peace in my life? What creates the harmony? And so when you start seeking God in these ways, and you start walking in that wisdom that He gives you, then that's what creates. So you're abiding in peace, and you continue to create more peace. And that's what He says, now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace. So you have peace now when you start following that wisdom. And the more you follow that wisdom, just the more peace it creates. So you have the fulfillment of all those desires. That is the difference in those two wisdoms. And so you have to change your whole perspective of how you're addressing what you're seeking in your life and what you're trying to gain and how you're doing that, and put all those other things aside and pursue these things by seeking the wisdom of how to live in those things. How to live in those things that really are truly the fulfillment of your deepest desires of your spirit. And if you do that, then that's what you will have. As I've seen this in my own life. So I didn't realize such this clear distinction that I'm explaining to you, but this is why it's so wonderful to give you this, is that now I see it much more clearly. So I have lived on both sides, where I pursued these things of the world, and I had those things by the world's judgments, and my spirit was completely deprived. So there was no peace, there was no enjoyment, there was no love, even though you have these things. Then on the other side, when I started seeking God and learning that wisdom, I started walking in that wisdom, and that started to change my perspective and focus. And when I did that, it brought all those things I truly desired into my life. The fulfillment, the peace, the joy, the purpose, the value, the honor, the love. Till next time, keep stirring the deep. It's the one thing that changes everything else.